listening to the Metal Command Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Metal Command Show. Tony here with you, and today I'm here to talk about Eddie Van Halen. It's October of 2023, so it's been 3 years since he has passed away, and I'm here to talk about Eddie Van Halen, the impact he's had on me and on so many other people, and I'm here to talk about these new remasters which just came out, the collection part 2. And what can I say? You know, when a musician passes away, and I'm going to be point blank honest with all of you folks out there. When a musician passes away, you get bummed out. You know, if it's somebody you don't know, I mean, there's been a couple musicians who have passed away that I knew really well, where I was really upset and devastated over it. But for the most part, like when Dio passed, was I bummed out? Absolutely. When Lemmy passed, was I bummed out? Absolutely. I was kind of down, like, man, there's no more Lemmy. But I'm going to be honest with you folks. When Eddie Van Halen passed away, I'll be honest with you, I was really, even though I don't know him and never interviewed him, never talked to him, never had any contact with him in the past, doing my radio show or whatnot, I was absolutely like upset about it for like at least a week, like really upset. Like I'd wake up, I'm like, I can't believe this dude's gone. And it really had a huge impact on me when he passed. And part of that is Van Halen as a band, and I'm going to go into the accomplishments and, Eddie's legacy and everything here in a second. They were just this band that always put me in a good mood. Like I could put any album in that they put out, and you were just instantly, it's like, man, this band like really lifts my spirits. Eddie's playing, songwriting, regardless of what era of the band it was, put me in a great mood and had a tremendous influence on me. Eddie Van Halen's in one of my top 10 guitar players of all time. And for me, I think the whole David Lee Roth versus Sammy Hagar argument, because every time, the last couple of years, anytime, that someone would bring up about Eddie Van Halen passing away, there's all these idiots in the comments having this argument over the Roth versus Hagar era. To me, it didn't matter who was singing. It was never about the singer for me. It was about Eddie and his playing. The singer really didn't matter to me that much. It's all about Eddie and his playing. Now, I know there was the Gary Cherone era, which lasted very briefly. I don't think that album was really terrible like some people think it is. But again, the main singers, Roth and Hagar, okay? Because those guys were obviously, both eras were extremely successful. But it's always been about Eddie and his genius. Now, for me, I think about this. Eddie Van Halen changed the way people played guitar. There are guys that come out, people love their playing, people gravitate to them, but there are very few people that come out and change the way you play guitar. Like Jimi Hendrix changed a lot of people, made his mark and changed the way a lot of people played guitar, right? Tony Iommi did that. There are some people out there who have done that. Yngwie Malmsteen did that. But Eddie Van Halen changed the way so many people play guitar. He influenced countless people, countless bands in multiple genres of music, not just metal or hard rock, but a lot of musicians will come out and say, hey, Van Halen was a huge influence on me. And that's the genius of Eddie. Like one of the biggest things when I look back at Van Halen, right? I'll give you an example. When they had David Lee Roth in the band the first time, 1984, I still believe is their biggest selling album. It's like 15 million copies or something like that. I think that's sold. According to the U.S. Billboard Top 100. I'm talking about the U.S. only. And then they changed singers. Now, folks, For a band to remain successful after changing singers is very difficult. It is one of the most difficult things as a band you can go through, because the singer is your identity. It's the face of the band. Regardless of how great the other musicians are, the first person people look at is your lead singer. And David Lee Roth, as a stage presence in his prime, he put on probably one of the best shows anybody has ever put on. Right? And then you get another singer in the band. Now, here's the thing that's interesting. So when I look at, and I'm going to talk about both of these eras in a second. My favorite Van Halen album actually is Fair Warning. That's my favorite Van Halen album. I can go back and listen to that nonstop. Mainly because I loved Eddie's playing. I love the style of music he wrote. It was a little bit of a darker record, probably than some of the other stuff. But Fair Warning to me is my favorite Van Halen album. Believe it or not, my second favorite is 5150. But Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth, it's oil and water. They are completely different. So this is what I've always said. Number one, I think Sammy Hagar by far has the better singing voice. Just talking about singing voice. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not talking about stage presence. Better singing voice. You know, he was an established, because he had an established solo career before he joined Van Halen. Obviously, Van Halen probably elevated his career, joining that band, but he had an established career before that. And as a singer, I think he's a better singer. But David Lee Roth, regardless, whatever you want to think of him, because all the Sammy Hagar fans will bash him and say he sucks and whatever. He fit the band really well. I think on Fair Warning, on the old Van Halen stuff, I could not imagine Sammy Hagar singing on that stuff in the studio. It wouldn't sound right. I mean, yeah, you can hear him sing some of that stuff live. Great. But as far as the studio albums are concerned, Roth, it was it. But I think David Lee Roth was the better showman on stage. When you go on and watch videos of both of them on stage, he was a better showman. And actually, Sammy Hagar has admitted that. I mean, if you go in, there are interviews where he talks about Roth being a better stage, showman, better stage presence with some of his acrobatics and stuff that he did on stage. He talks about that and how he thinks Roth was better had a better, put on a little bit of a better show than he did as far as the stage presence. But as far as the singing goes, it's Sammy Hagar. And you could go back, like Sammy Hagar in the first couple Montrose albums, phenomenal. Probably two of the best records I've ever heard him sing on. His solo career has been pretty solid. And being a dude in his 70s, still sounds pretty solid as a vocalist. I mean, you lose a little bit, but I think he's held up quite well over the years. But the impact... But the impact Eddie Van Halen has had, and the fact that he was able to put a completely different sounding singer in the band. And even though Sammy Hagar was accomplished before he joined the band, you still got to have that musical chemistry. You still have to be able to put a pretty good album out. Now, I went back and looked at some numbers. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but what's interesting is the Roth era of Van Halen has obviously outsold what they did with Sammy Hagar. I think just between the first album and 1984, I believe both of those records have sold close to what they did during the entire Sammy Hagar era. The difference is, though, what's interesting, though, is they had 4 number one albums, I believe, with Hagar in the band. They just didn't have the total sales that the back catalog pre-Sammy had, right? And I believe last time I looked, that's what that said. And I'm talking about number one albums in the U.S. I'm not talking about Europe or anywhere else in the world. But to be able to be that successful still after changing singers is a huge accomplishment, because it is not easy for bands to do that. And that's part of the genius that is Eddie Van Halen, folks. That is part of the genius of what he was. To be able to accomplish that, to be able to go and still make platinum selling albums and having songs and albums still and playing big arenas still when you change singers is a very, very difficult thing. I'm going to get to the remasters here in a second, the new ones that just came out. But for me, Eddie Van Halen had a huge impact. I mean, he just, as a musician, pretty much every album. I mean, Van Halen 3 is probably my least favorite. And I think that probably, if anybody listens to them, that might, for most people, it probably is. But I'm going to be honest with you. Aside from that, whether it was David Lee Roth singing in the band or it was Sammy Hagar in the band, I'll be honest with you. Every album they've done is pure gold. And to be honest with you, I love The Different Kind of Truth. I thought that was a great record. That was the last studio album that they put out. It was pure gold. It was pure gold. So Eddie Van Halen, it's my tribute to him. Just one of my favorite people. I wish he could have. I've met a lot of musicians. I wish I could have met him. To be able to talk to the guy for like 5 minutes and just to meet him would have been awesome. I have friends that have met him. I have friends that have interviewed him. But he really did truly have a huge impact on me. Now on to the remasters. This remaster package has the 4 albums that they did with Sammy Hagar. It's got 5150, OU 812. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, Balance, and then they have some studio rarities. A lot of these are like songs that were done that may not have been released, or they were songs that were done for movie soundtracks. I believe Humans Being, for example, was on the movie Twister. But nevertheless, I had the first collection of albums from the Roth era, which definitely needed a remaster, and they sound phenomenal. But I was always wondering when this would happen, when the Hagar era of the band would be remastered. And I think it's a good marketing thing because, I talked earlier about that stupid, silly divide between Van Halen fans, between the Hagar era and Roth era. So you have them packaged separately. But these albums definitely needed a remaster. Bad. Actually, I remember when I heard about it, I went and listened to my CD copy of 5150. That's like 30 some years old. Definitely does not sound as good as this. But these all sound great. These remasters have been repackaged, little mini LP boxes, a little mini LP thing. Pretty nice, actually. I think these are cool. They did the same thing with the early albums, but definitely something that needed to happen. I think that this collection is really good. I think this collection of records is, for me, I think this collection of albums is one that we've needed for a long time. So they sound great. Badly needed. Now we have the catalog pretty much all redone and remastered. I'm not a big fan of going and buying reissues all the time. I'm just not that person. But Van Halen was definitely a band that needed to have remasters done, and they have done them for both of the major eras of the band, and I definitely dig them. So other than that, man, folks, let me know in the comments, what kind of impact did Eddie Van Halen have on you? Are you a guitar player did he change your playing? Was he a big influence on you? What are your favorite Van Halen albums? And from either era of the band or both, if you're like me, leave a comment. I'm curious to what all of you think. So with that said, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon.